Okay, students, will start water today. Now, water is an universal solvent that we have already studied in class 8. Now, why it is known as universal solvent? Because it can dissolve most of the substance, whether it's solid, liquid, or gas. It can dissolve many substance in it, and therefore it is known as universal solvent. Now, the universal solvent is due to the high dielectric constant of water. Now, this is not a very important for you at present. You will study in higher class. But in simple language, we can explain to you what is dielectric constant. Di means two, electric means charge. Now, when I talk about water, the charge of hydrogen is positive and the charge of oxygen is negative. And this positive and negative is called dielectric. And this charges in water, this is very strong charge. That's a strong electrostatic charge. So in simple language, you can say that this dielectric constant actually means the charge, strong electrostatic charge is called this dielectric constant, and the charge in water is very high. That means this positive and negative charge is very strong, and that is the reason most of the substance which dissolves in water, the particles present in those substance easily breaks. For example, if I take salt, common salt, common salt easily dissolve in water because common salt is an electrovalent compound. Common salt is also made up of sodium and chlorine, and there is also a positive and negative charge. Now when this sodium chloride dissolves in water, now due to this dielectric constant, the charge, there is a separation of this positive and negative ions, and this sodium and chlorine breaks into Na plus and Cl minus, and due to this splitting into ions, the sodium chloride easily dissolve in water. So it is due to this dielectric constant that when other substance dissolves in water, they easily splits into ions, and therefore they easily dissolve in water, and this is called dielectric constant. So water is an universal solvent due to its dielectric constant, and because it can dissolve most of the substance, solid, liquid, or gas. Now there is some importance of dissolved salts present in water. You already know that first of all, water, the taste in water is due to the dissolved salts, because pure water is tasteless. Now if you talk about boiled water or distilled water, it does not have any taste. It's a flat water, a flat taste. But mineral water has a taste, because it is due to the dissolved salts and minerals. Water has a taste to it. Second of all, it is also essential for the growths of our bones and teeth. So dissolved salts and minerals is essential for our growths of bones and teeth, and also for our other metabolic functions of body. Dissolved salts and minerals are necessary, and which you get from water. There is some importance of dissolved gases also in water. Dissolved gases means, when I say dissolved oxygen in water, the importance of that. Aquatic animals, the respiration takes place in aquatic animals is due to this dissolved oxygen, like fishes and other whales, dolphins. They extract the oxygen from the dissolved water, and it helps in their respiration. Dissolved carbon dioxide also is important. Dissolved carbon dioxide is used by aquatic plants for photosynthesis. So that is dissolved the use of dissolved carbon dioxide. Dissolved carbon dioxide is used by aquatic plants for photosynthesis, thereby preparing food for them. Now, another important use of dissolved carbon dioxide is that the dissolved carbon dioxide present in water reacts with limestone. You know, limestones are present in river bed and sea beds. So this is limestone, and this is the carbon dioxide, and this is water, say sea water or river water, and the dissolved carbon dioxide, and when they react with limestone that is present underwater, they form calcium bicarbonate. Calcium bicarbonate. And from this calcium bicarbonate, aquatic animals, means animals which have shells, they form shells from this calcium bicarbonate that is present in water. Because you know, calcium bicarbonate is a solution. It remained dissolved in water. So first thing, how it is happening, this is the dissolved carbon dioxide, this is the water, and this is limestone. They react with each other and they form calcium bicarbonate, which remains as a solution in the water, and from this calcium bicarbonate that is present in water, those aquatic animals, they extract calcium carbonate from them, which slowly grow on their bodies. So they slowly extract calcium carbonate over their body, and therefore a shell is formed, like you know, tortoise, oysters. So all this, so this calcium bicarbonate, from this calcium bicarbonate again they extract calcium carbonate, and this calcium carbonate is the shells. Understand? So this is the dissolved carbon dioxide, water, limestone, they form calcium bicarbonate, and from this calcium bicarbonate, aquatic animals, they again extract calcium carbonate on their body, and from that they grow shells on them. So this is the importance of dissolved gases in water. Okay. Next is solution. Now solution means it is a homogeneous mixture. Homogeneous mixture means which is uniform composition throughout. It is an homogeneous mixture of solute and solvent. Now what is solute and what is solvent? Solvent is the medium in which one or more particle, one or more substances dissolves. So that is called solvent. So like water is a solvent, alcohol is a solvent, carbon disulfide is a solvent. So all these are liquid in which certain substance can dissolve. So that is a solvent. So medium in which one or more substance dissolves is called solvent, and solute is the particle which get dissolves. So this substance is called solute. Understand? So that means the particle which get dissolved in the solution, that is called solute. So finally we can say solute plus solvent gives you solution. Like you know, solute, you can say solute means sugar is a solute, and solvent for sugar, you know, water. And when sugar dissolve in water, we get sugar solution. So that means solution, we can say it is solute plus solvent. So that is called solution. Okay. Now, saturated solution. Next is saturated solution. Now, generally, when we dissolve a certain substance in a solvent, that is an unsaturated solution. Now, unsaturated, saturated. What is the difference between the unsaturated means which can dissolve more solute. So that is unsaturated solution. Now suppose we take 100 gram of water. So this is 100 gram of water, say at 30 degrees Celsius. So that's room temperature. Now if I dissolve 1 gram of say NaCl, sodium chloride, then this becomes an unsaturated solution. Because I have dissolved 1 gram, it can dissolve more salt. So that means the solution which can dissolve more solute, that means more solute can be dissolved in it, that is called unsaturated. But saturated means, saturated means full, house full, there is no space. Now saturated solution means which cannot dissolve more solute at that temperature, because the solubility will generally increases with increasing temperature. So at a particular temperature, if a solution cannot dissolve more solute, then we say that solution has become saturated at that temperature. Now again, if we come back to this unsaturated solution, now this was unsaturated. What I have done, I have just dissolved 1 gram of salt. Next, another 1 gram of salt. I am dissolving and stirring. It is dissolving. Next, again another 1 gram of salt. I am stirring and dissolving. Now, if I continuously go on like this, repeating, each time I add 1 gram means a little quantity, and I am stirring it, it is dissolving. Now, if I continuously do this, a time will come when I will see that now the salt is not dissolving, but it is just settling without dissolving. That means now this solution has no space to accommodate further NaCl. And in that case, I say that now this is a saturated solution of sodium chloride at 30 degrees Celsius. Okay. So that means, for example, I have added 10 gram of NaCl, and when I am just dissolving the 11th gram, it is not dissolving. So that means I can say that it has become saturated. And further, I can also say that solubility of sodium chloride is 10 gram at 30 degree Celsius. This measurement is also called the solubility, which I will explain you later. That means I can say that the solubility of sodium chloride is how much? 10 gram at 30 degrees Celsius. This means what? This means at 30 degrees Celsius, 10 gram of sodium chloride can saturate 100 gram of water. So that's a measurement. So that is called solubility. And this is called saturated solution. Understand? And you have understood how to prepare saturated solution. So that is the thing. So we'll take 100 gram of a solvent, say water, and we'll continuously add little bit of solute each time, and we'll stir it. A time will come that when I will find no solute is getting dissolved. At that time, I can say that the solution is saturated. So that is called saturated solution. Now next is supersaturated solution. Supersaturated solution means which can hold more solute than its saturated solution at that temperature. Now again, if I come back to this saturated solution, now it is saturated. Now if I slightly heat this solution, say I am just heating it to 33 degrees Celsius, a little bit. It's not that I am just heating it too much. I am just heating it to a certain rising temperature. A small amount of rising temperature is there. It was 30 degree saturated, but I am heating it to 33 degrees Celsius. Now I will find I can add more solute and it can dissolve more solute now. Say suppose I have added further 2 gram of NaCl. Okay, that means how much total I have added? 12 gram. I have added 12 gram of sodium chloride, but the temperature was more, 33. Now if I cool this solution, and if I cool this solution back to the room temperature again, if I cool this again to 30 degrees Celsius as it was before, now I will see that this extra 2 gram is not settling down. That means if you remember that at 30 degrees Celsius its capacity was only 10 gram and that was saturated. But since I have heated it and then I have added some little more of solute, and then again I am cooling it back to 30 degrees Celsius, that extra 2 gram that I have added is not coming out. That means actually now it has 12 gram of solute, but actually at 30 degrees Celsius it could have accommodated only 10 gram. So that means this solution now have an extra 2 gram than its saturated solution. That means in fact you can say that we have forcefully dissolved it. Now somewhere in a sitting arrangement, if you don't have space, if you forcefully somebody forcefully sit instead of 5, 6 is sitting, so that's an extra force they are adding to accommodate their places, so that's super saturated. So actually the saturation was 10 gram, but since I have heated to 33 degrees Celsius, some space of water molecules have increased little bit, due to this heat, and therefore that extra amount of salt is getting accommodated between these water molecules. Now this was saturated, and if I heat it more and it more space, so some extra amount of sugar molecule or salt molecules getting accommodated. But when I am cooling it, this is not getting out. So that means that is called supersaturated solution. So how to prepare a supersaturated solution? To prepare a supersaturated solution, first you have to make a saturated solution. And then if you heat that saturated solution, you will see that you can dissolve some more solid to it, stir it, and some more solid can be dissolved in it. And after cooling that solution back to the room temperature, we will find that the extra amount of solute that you have dissolved is not coming back. That means now the solution contains more solute than its saturated solution, and that is called supersaturated solution. Okay, next is solubility. Now just now as I have told you, solubility means the amount of solute which can saturate 100 gram of solvent at that temperature. For example, as I have told you, if you take 100 gram of water, and suppose the temperature is 30 degrees Celsius, then if I add 1 gram and 1 gram and 1 gram, and every time I add 1 gram and dissolve it, and I find, suppose when I add 10 gram of NaCl, then it becomes saturated. Then what I say? I say solubility of NaCl at 30 degrees Celsius is 10 gram. So solubility of NaCl at 30 degrees Celsius is 10 gram. Understand? So solubility means it is the amount of solute in grams which can dissolve in 100 gram of solvent at that temperature. Now suppose Now 30 degree, now at 35 degrees Celsius, say this is at 30 degrees Celsius. Now when I heat to 35 degrees Celsius, then I find it is not, now then it becomes say 12 gram. Then at 40 degrees Celsius, I find it is 13 gram. Then at 45 degrees Celsius, I find it is 15 gram. Understand? So I say solubility of sodium chloride at 30 degrees Celsius is 10 gram. At 35 degrees Celsius is 12 gram. At 40 degrees Celsius is 13 gram. At 45 degrees Celsius is 15 gram, like this. Now with these values, if I now draw a graph, now this is temperature and this is mass in gram, temperature in degrees Celsius. Understand? Now suppose this is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 and 100 degrees Celsius, like this. And this is again gram, okay, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 and so on. Now if I draw a graph with these values, then at 10 gram, means at 30 degrees Celsius the saturation is 10 gram solubility. So at 30 degrees Celsius the saturation is 10 gram. Then at 35 degrees Celsius it is 12 gram. Then at 40 degrees Celsius it is 13 gram. Then at 45 degrees Celsius it is 15 gram. So if I plot this point, I get a graph like this. And if I write say the sodium chloride, then from this graph I can study the behavior of sodium chloride, that how the graph is changing. Now similarly if you do the same thing with say potassium nitrate. Now potassium nitrate is a highly soluble water. Its solubility is very high. Now in that case you will find 30 degrees Celsius it is 10 gram, 35 degrees Celsius it becomes 17 gram, then 40 degrees Celsius it becomes 25 gram. So that means the solubility increasing much. In that case what will happen, say at 30 degrees Celsius it is this, at 45 degrees Celsius it is this, it is this, at 50 degrees Celsius it is this, at say 60 degrees Celsius it is this. Then you will find this type of graph like this. So and if I write here KNO3, now if you see from this graph, from this curve you can easily study and the difference between sodium chloride and potassium nitrate from the shape of the graph. And this is called a solubility curve. Not in your syllabus at this time, but it is in your book. So but still for your knowledge I am just explaining you. Like this. In case of calcium sulfate, suppose calcium sulfate, you will find the shape of the graph is more or less like this. That means what it is happening, calcium sulfate is solubility is first increasing and then started decreasing. So this is calcium sulfate. In fact, this is hydrated calcium sulfate, CaSO4.2H2O. Generally, this type of solubility is called anomalous solubility. That means solubility first increases and then decreases with rising temperature. And generally it happens in those salts which has a water of crystallization. Another example is Glauber's salt. If you see Glauber's salt you will find like this. Means at 34.5 degrees Celsius up to 34.5 degrees Celsius its solubility increases. And after 34.5 degrees Celsius its solubility start decreasing. Why? Because up to 34.5 degrees Celsius this Glauber's salt up to 34.5 degrees Celsius its solubility was increasing, because up to 34.5 degrees Celsius the Glauber's salt remains hydrated. But due to that heat, slowly this water gets evaporated and removed. and then it become anhydrous, and as it become anhydrous, then its solubility start decreasing, because there is a change in composition in the molecular structure, so therefore its solubility varies. So up to 34.5 degree it remains hydrated, and therefore its solubility increasing. Same thing for calcium sulfate also. Up to a certain temperature it remains hydrated, and as soon as it becomes anhydrous, then its solubility start decreasing. So this is about solubility and solubility curve. What are the factors which can affect solubility of a particle, of a substance? Naturally, the size of the particle. You have seen that if you means a particles, if the particles are very fine, powdery, then it dissolves very quick. In case of sugar also, you will find that a fine powder of sugar, they dissolve quickly. But a bigger particles of sugar, they does not dissolve quickly. You have to stir it more vigorously. So that's the size of the particle. That means what? Smaller the size of the particle, greater is the solubility. Next is stirring. Stirring increases the rate of the solubility. More vigorously you stir it, more better it dissolves. Next is temperature. That you also know that solubility of solids increase with rise in temperature. Generally, there are some certain exceptions, as you have seen here. But in case of gases, the solubility of a gas always decreases with rising temperature. That means when you heat a liquid, the solubility of the gas in the liquid decreases. So that means for a common experience, if you see that while heating water, you will find that small bubbles, they stick in this vessel, and the small bubbles of gases come out from the water. When boiling it comes, you have seen, but before boiling also you will see that you are just heating it, and you will see fine small bubbles forming inside this water, and they are just bursting it like this. So that means what? Those are gases. Those are dissolved gases. Because you are heating, their solubility is decreasing, and therefore they are getting out of the liquid. Understand? So that is the difference between a solubility of a solid and solubility of a gas. Okay. Now sometimes this name the following is also very important. I have just explained you. Name solubility. Name a salt whose solubility increases with rise in temperature. Increases with rise in temperature. You can say sodium nitrate NaNO3. Then potassium nitrate KNO3. Okay. So all this etc. There are others also, but at least two you should know: sodium nitrate, potassium nitrate. Solubility of a salt whose solubility increases slightly with rising temperature. Slightly with rising temperature is common salt. That is sodium chloride. And the solubility whose solubility first increases and then decreases is this two. That is calcium sulfate, hydrated calcium sulfate, and hydrated sodium sulfate. Hydrated sodium sulfate, also known as Glauber salt. Okay, so these are very important, so you should learn. Okay, next is water of crystallization. The water of crystallization is that the fixed amount of water molecules that is associated with certain substance, and they give the crystalline structure of that salt. Some salts looks like crystals. Say blue vitriol. Blue vitriol, that is hydrated copper sulfate. So this is called water of crystallization, and this is actually loosely associated with copper sulfate. Now when I say only copper sulfate CuSO4, this is white in color, and this is anhydrous copper sulfate. Anhydrous copper sulfate. But this CuSO4 0.5H2O, this is blue in color, also known as blue vitriol. and this is hydrated copper sulfate. So this fixed molecules of water, now this is fixed, that means always with copper sulfate there will be associated with 5 molecules of water. With other substance you have seen in washing soda or Glober salt, just now I told you Na2SO4, there is 10 molecules of water. In green vitriol FeSO4 there are 7 molecules of water, 7H2 FeSO4. This is green vitriol or hydrated ferrous sulfate. Now this is green in color. But when I say anhydrous ferrous sulfate FeSO4, this is white in color. So you can say due to this water of crystallization, there are sometimes in some salt there are colors also. In some salts, not in all. Like Glober salt is white. Anhydrous also it is white, hydrated also it is white. But green vitriol is green in color, but anhydrous ferrous sulfate is white in color. Now if I say copper sulfate, it is blue in color, blue vitriol. Now that actually means what? Now suppose this is 1 molecule of copper sulfate, and this 1 molecule of copper sulfate contains 5 molecules of water associated with it. So when I say only copper sulfate, so this is the only copper sulfate. But when with that copper sulfate molecule, 5 molecules of each copper sulfate molecule, this is only 1 copper sulfate molecule, and with every 1 copper sulfate molecule, if there are 5 water molecules associated, then that is called water of crystallization, and that is blue vitriol. Now if I heat this, all this water gets out, vaporizes, and then only copper sulfate is left. And therefore, say if I CuSO4 0.5H2, if I heat, it is reversible, and then you get CuSO4 and water gets separated. Now this is blue and this is white. Now if with this white copper sulfate, anhydrous copper sulfate, if I again add water, then again it will turn blue, and then if I balance it, it get 5, so you get CuSO4 0.5H2, so again it will turns blue. So that is called water of crystallization. Understand? Okay, next is efflorescence, deliquescence and hygroscopic. Now these are phenomenons. Now efflorescence are the phenomenon in which certain hydrated substance, when they exposed in dry atmosphere, they loses their water of crystallization and then become anhydrous. And those substances are known as efflorescent substance, and this phenomenon is known as efflorescence. Say if you take washing soda Na2CO3 0.10H2O. Now if you just washing soda always should be kept in airtight container. Now if you just don't keep it airtight, then what happens? It loses its moisture, water of crystallization, to the atmosphere, and then you will find that washing soda has become this big lumps. They change into lumps, that powder, and that washing soda gets spoiled. So the phenomenon in which certain substance, they loses their water of crystallization when exposed to air, dry air. So this phenomenon is called efflorescence, and those substances are known as efflorescent substance, like washing soda, Glober salt, all these are efflorescent substances. Deliquescent substances are reverse. There are certain substances which when exposed to air, they absorb moisture from the atmosphere, and they absorb moisture from the atmosphere and ultimately dissolved in that moisture and becomes a saturated solution, because the moisture is less and the solute is more. So they ultimately, you can say they change into liquid, because they absorb so much moisture that they ultimately dissolve in it and ultimately becomes a saturated solution. So that is called deliquescence, and the substance are called deliquescent substance. Examples of deliquescent substances, say magnesium chloride and say aluminum oxide, commonly known as alumina. Now it is due to this reason, common salt becomes wet on rainy season. Now common salt, it is sodium chloride, but remember, sodium chloride is not deliquescent. So that's a mistake to think that sodium chloride is not deliquescent, but magnesium chloride is deliquescent, which is remain as impurities, present as impurities. In salt, in common salt. Because salt is generally prepared from seawater, and seawater, not only common salt, there are other type of salts are also present, but mainly sodium chloride. But MgCl2 is also present in that common salt as an impurities, and if that salt is not properly purified, then a large amount of MgCl2 remains in that salt as impurities, and that magnesium chloride is a deliquescent substance, and therefore in rainy season, the atmosphere is moist, and therefore it absorbs moisture from the atmosphere. So that is deliquescent substance. Hygroscopic substance, same as deliquescent, but they does not dissolve in it. They does not absorb as much moisture as deliquescent, and hence they does not change their state. They does not dissolve in that water. Hygroscopic substances are also those substances which, on exposed to atmosphere, they absorb moisture from the atmosphere but does not dissolve in it. So that is hygroscopic substance. So you can say it is phosphorus pentoxide, it is concentrated sulfuric acid. All these are hygroscopic substances. Okay. Next is drying agent and dehydrating agent. Okay. Now drying agent and dehydrating agent. Drying agent means which absorb moisture from other substance. Means it makes other substance dry. Say anhydrous calcium chloride, phosphorus pentoxide, all these are drying agent. Now what is the role of drying agent? Say moist oxygen. If you pass moist oxygen to phosphorus pentoxide, it will become dry oxygen. That means it just absorbs moisture and changes a moist substance to a dry substance. But what is dehydrating agent? Dehydrating agent, they also do the same thing. They can also absorb moisture from other substance, but they can also remove chemically combined water from other substance, which a normal drying agent cannot do. You should understand the difference between just absorbing moisture. Absorbing moisture means it is absorbing moisture from the surface. So moist oxygen is becoming dry oxygen. But dehydrating agent can remove what? Chemically combined water. Hence this difference is also very important, because most of the students get confused. Most of them don't know about, they think they are same. Now you can understand from here, this is what? Copper sulfate CuSO4 0.5H2O. This is a chemically combined water. Now when I say moist oxygen, that's not chemically combined water, it's just wet oxygen, moist oxygen. But when I say CuSO4 5H2O, this is a chemically combined water. Now if you add concentrated sulfuric acid here, then what will happen? In this case also it will become white and it will absorb. Now still here you can see water, okay, 5H2O. But if you say this C11H22O11, this is cane sugar cane. Means it is sugar, glucose. Now if you pass concentrated sulfuric acid to it, here is also water, hydrogen and water. If you see, if you take 11, here is, you can say 11 molecules of water are present. Try to understand C11, and if you take 11 common in them, and if you find H2O, now see, so there are 11 molecules of water which are chemically combined. Now if you pass concentrated sulfuric acid, then carbon and water get separated. And then you have to balance it. So you have 11 and here also 11. And this is carbon, black color. So all this it comes in observation also. What happens when you add concentrated sulfuric acid to sugarcane? The observation is black carbon is formed. Black carbon is formed. Generally this is known as sugar charcoal. So you see, chemically combined water has been removed. So that is dehydrating agent. Another, if you see, this is formic acid, HCOOH. You can see there. You see, this is formic acid, HCOOH. And if you see concentrated sulfuric acid, if you pass, what you get? You get carbon monoxide and water. Here is also chemically combined water. Now if you see this way, if you see this, you see H2O. What is left? So again here concentrated sulfuric acid, concentrated sulfuric acid is acting as a dehydrating agent. I'll give you another example which is not given in your book, but you can understand. You see, this is COOH whole twice plus, not plus because actually it's not reacting, it is just absorbing. So we write above the arrow concentrated. What you will get? You will get carbon dioxide, you will get carbon monoxide, and you will get water. Here also it is extracting chemically combined water. Now you may not understand from here, and now I'm sure you will understand from here. You know, this is oxalic acid. Its structure is like this. When you go to higher classes in class 10, you'll study organic chemistry, and in that case the chemical formulas are written in this way, structural formulas. You see, this is COOH whole twice, but actually it is written in this way. Now, in fact, concentrated H2SO4. Now if you remove water, H2O, now I'm just taking H2O from any part, and you see COO, so that is CO2, and you see CO, that is CO, and you see H2O, and this is H2O. So this is a dehydrating agent. Understand? So sometimes it also comes, what is the difference between a dehydrating agent and a drying agent? So it's given in your book also, but you can give this definition, and these reactions are also important. Okay? So that's all in this water chapter.